I am really excited. We've had some really good guests today, but I'm really, really excited. I've been excited about all of this. I don't want to judge people inappropriately, but Bryan Rotella is joining us. That name may not ring a bell with you, but the subject matter we're going to be talking on is so very important. Bryan is an attorney. He's the founder, CEO, and senior partner of Genco Legal. Bryan, welcome to the Brian Killmeade Show.
Joe, thank you very much.
And we're going to talk about something that I think is, frankly, being kind of underreported, if that's at all possible. But that is the development of artificial intelligence. And it seems as if one day we didn't have it, and then the next day it was perfected. I mean, when the ChatGPT went online, it just seemed like that was a benchmark point in human history in which AI, I don't want to say became self-aware, because that's not the case, but when AI came of age.
Yeah, Joe, I agree. And one of the things I'm here to talk about is not many people reported this last week. Cigna got sued by a couple folks out in California, and I'm calling that the first shots in what I consider to be like the Lexington and Concord of what I call the new dawn of AI malpractice. And what I mean by that, Joe, is that what we are starting to see is, and I know you're in Florida like I am, is I can see in the very near future with artificial intelligence, if we don't get this right, there's going to be billboards that say hurt by a chatbot instead of hurt in an accident.
Wow. And these are cases that I mean, are there legal teams ready for the artificial intelligence litigation?
We are. My team is, but beyond that, the reason I'm bringing this up in this way is why I call it the dawn of AI malpractice is this. We are at this major intersection, as you said, of this. Quite frankly, there's been, just use healthcare. I've been in healthcare as a lawyer for 23 years, everywhere from the courtroom to the boardroom to the war room. Joe, this is changes like we haven't seen since the invention of penicillin, when people used to die from like strep throat before AI. AI is at this intersection of disruption and opportunism that we have never seen before in this industry. I mean, I know for a fact that AI is going to be able to, and is currently able to diagnose things like the very, very beginning signs of tumors way before a biopsy or a CT scan ever could. It's literally going to take notes for doctors and is doing that right now, so they can actually imagine a doctor having a conversation with you and not dialing up and on their laptop for the entire time. This is the massive disruption that it's doing in a good way. But as we saw, and the irony of this is Cigna got sued last week, and it actually wasn't AI. It was basically a true-false type of program that they had that, for what they're alleging, was like kind of low-level tests, like if you had a vitamin D deficiency. Basically, this, according to the allegations, they would go through like 300,000 of these claims from folks trying to get their insurance covered for their care, and it would deny like 300,000 of these claims, and it would do it in 1.2 seconds. So what does that mean, Joe? Well, yeah, I had a friend tell me recently, if we convert all over to automated cars with artificial intelligence, currently there's about 42,000 people that tragically die in car accidents every year. Well, what if artificial intelligence takes it down to 5,000? Right now, Joe, does your audience and you think that we're going to be talking about the 35,000 lives it saved or the 5,000 lives that died? Right now, I believe we're focused on the 5,000 lives that died, because we have not yet built, to answer your question, while we're ready, we haven't built the confidence in the public, because this is moving so fast, that humans are still actively involved in the artificial intelligence and putting their human side, our human side, into things like, should your health care be denied or not be denied? I don't know that we're ready for R2-D2 to be deciding whether we get an ultrasound.
Great Star Wars reference. To use your example about cars and AI-driven cars, I mean, an AI-driven car will have to be programmed as to who gets a priority when it comes to life or death. If a car is approaching an intersection at full speed and the car detects that there's nobody there, there's nobody in the way, and then suddenly, some school children all holding hands walk out into the intersection, your car is going to have to decide, Do I plow through the children, or do I suddenly veer off to the right where I most certainly am going to kill the driver of the car?
That's absolutely right, Joe. And who is making those? It's garbage in, garbage out. That's what you hear a lot right now about things like ChatGPT. And for your audience, what this is generative AI, and a lot of folks may not yet be using it. It's basically learning from what we call prompts, questions that you ask it, and it's going through in milliseconds, imagine the internet, to come up with words that predict what would be the right answers. So in your example, the AI is learning to predict in milliseconds what's the right answer. Does it sadly plow over the folks that you were talking about, or is it turn into the left because there's a lesser risk of hurting the driver and the other people? That's the auto example. Taking it more to what is happening right now and consider it in healthcare is, do we feel comfortable that AI is at a point that it can make a determination on looking at records and predicting based on the records that you may have if somebody who might be suspected of, let's say, ovarian cancer should get a CT scan? Do we feel comfortable that it's at that level? Now, I've seen technology that says that it is. But here's the issue. I don't think the public is ready for that yet, so we need to have a human component. And here's really where I come in and lawyers come in, Joe, is the laws right now are the equivalent of the laws we had when we went over to automobiles and we were still dealing with stagecoaches. The laws have not in any way caught up with this whole idea of what is your override switch? What is, to use your analogy, what is the human that's still there to help both on the front end of the programming or the prompting of the AI, and also of ultimately on the back end determining, did the AI make the right judgment? Those laws have literally not been created, but AI is right now doing something probably for everybody in this audience, and they may not know it.
We're talking to attorney Bryan Rotella. And Brian, I'm an FAA licensed drone pilot, and I know that the drone technology is advancing faster than lawmakers can regulate it. And I am absolutely certain the same is happening right now with artificial intelligence. This toothpaste, though, is out of the tube. I mean, I don't see a way to put it back.
That's absolutely right. There's not a way to put it back, and what concerns me is, and you had obviously a great show and doing a wonderful job for Brian, and I really like your show over in Orlando, just so you know, because I'm in Tampa down the I-4 corridor. But I hear a ton about Hunter Biden and a ton about what's going on with the different Trump lawsuits, which are important issues. But in November of 2024, every politician that's in any type of campaign right now should be talking about what we're talking about, which is the toothpaste is out of the tube. We should be having emergency hearings right now, and I know they've had some, but talking about how do we regulate what I call the override switch on artificial intelligence, building the trust, using my Star Wars analogy again, that R2-D2 is not flying the ship by itself, that there still is a Luke Skywalker. Until we get the public that confidence, my concern is that, using my analogy from earlier, we're going to be focusing on the 5,000 deaths, or like this lawsuit, we're going to be focusing on the insurance denials and not all of the positive things, because we have not educated the public and we have not built the laws that need to be built to protect people.
Brian, I was watching a documentary over the weekend. I think it was on Netflix, and it was about artificial intelligence. And there was a group of scientists who, like you represent, like you've been talking about. This was healthcare. And these scientists were working with the artificial intelligence, giving it commands so that it could come up with all kinds of new drugs to help people with a variety of diseases. And it was really astonishing how quickly artificial intelligence versus, old laboratory work of trying to create medicines, but artificial intelligence was able to create cures and treatments so much faster than humans could before. But then one of the scientists said, we ought to look at this and see what the other side of it is, whether or not we can create biological weapons, chemical weapons. And so they changed the prompts They added to it to create biological and chemical weapons. And then they left the office for the night, and they came back the next morning, and there were literally like 10,000 different prescriptions, if you will, of chemical and biological weapons that have never been seen before. I mean, they were able to artificially create them just in a computer, and they presented their findings. They at first decided that they were going to keep it quiet and not let anybody know about their findings, lest anybody be inspired by it. But then they decided, and I think this was a good thing, to go public with it, get it published in a medical journal, so that everybody can see that there are real dangers involved in artificial intelligence.
Joe, it's a great example, and there's a popular movie out right now, Oppenheimer, that talks about obviously real history. And what happened there, as we all know, is we had the Manhattan Project, and we had to do that because of war and life and death interests. But basically, they created the atom bomb and then worried about it afterwards. And I think that it's not to try to be overly dramatic, but are we doing the same thing here? The movie describes well how the overseer of it in Oppenheimer actually had regrets afterwards. And there's a great scene in the film, with whether it's fictional or not, of Oppenheimer talking to Einstein about what you were just saying. Should we be sharing the findings of this potentially could destroy the world with, in that case, the Germans and the other countries that we were at war with, so that we can all realize what could be the dramatic negative effects of this? Right now, that's needed. Well, I was going to say, right now, in the artificial intelligence community, the more open dialogue across all countries and the more education that we're giving to the public about both all of the positives, and what you were saying at the beginning of this is absolutely true. I have seen it. I do believe it is going to change cancer as we know it. And with a mom who's a survivor of ovarian cancer, it's very personal to me. But on the flip side of it, I also see the potential that without the human override switch, without us getting laws updated in real time, I mean in 2023 and 2024, what you just described could be happening, and Lord knows what we would be saying as we get to an election in 2028, what the real concerns would be then.
We're going to continue this conversation with Bryan Rotella coming up straight ahead, so stay with us here. And Brian touched on the development of the atomic bomb, and this is akin, maybe not as big as that. I would disagree and say it's bigger than the development of the atomic bomb, because I think the world knows at this point, don't use the atomic bomb. But we're at a point where everybody can and is and will be using artificial intelligence. So we're going to continue that discussion as AI expands into our military and so much more. So stay with us here on the Brian Killmeade Show. My name is Joe Kelly. The number is 866-408-7669. Talking to Bryan Rotella. He is an attorney out of Florida. I am not an attorney, but I am out of Florida. Bryan Rotella, he's the founder and CEO and senior partner of Genco Legal. And just a side note here, hashtag fun fact. I trust, Brian, you know that your last name, your surname is the name of a seashell?
I do. I do, and also an oil company.
Well, that's right. So Shell Oil names all of their oil products after seashells, and there's a heavy oil called Shell Rotella. And all the rest of their products are named after seashells. So you also are named after a seashell. So how about that?
You know, there's Rotelli pasta too, so I'll take it.
Okay, very good. Now, I want to go back to, we're talking about artificial intelligence, and I want to go back to this documentary that I was watching over the weekend on Netflix, and they brought in a human fighter pilot, Air Force. He had gone through the Air Force equivalent of Top Gun. He had been active duty pilot F-18 for 25 years. I mean, it's safe to say he is probably one of the best, and he's served hundreds of combat missions, probably one of the absolute best human pilots in existence. But they put him up against AI pilots in a simulation, and he lost every single dogfight with artificial intelligence.
Well, Joe, I'm going to take the analogy back to healthcare. I apologize, but it's where I spend so much of my time, but it's relevant. The same thing's happened with radiologists. They've been doing tests where AI is outperforming radiologists to the tune of 90, 95%. But it gets back to the question that we're asking. is an artificial intelligence generative in its learning model that's learning through predicting. Are we comfortable that artificial intelligence can determine, do we have the beginnings of cancer or we don't? From what I've seen, I feel very comfortable with it. But has the public been educated to that point to where they feel comfortable with it? And there's a separate issue that you just brought up that I've brought up before and have had the benefit of being in media talking about, which is, think of the displacement you just talked about, and you said that you're FAA licensed with drones. My industry is being massively displaced right now because of artificial intelligence. Now, I'm sure there's a lot of lawyer jokes out there, and quite frankly warranted, that that's probably a good thing, and maybe it is. But think about the other industries, and getting back to healthcare. How many people work at insurance companies where they may not be needed anymore? Those are people with good paying jobs. And why are we not talking about that in this primary election cycle? Yeah. There is a potential of a massive unemployment coming because of a type of displacement we haven't seen since the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, and no one's talking about it.
Brian, we are, and it's a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you so much for your time. I know that Brian's listeners really appreciate the information that you're sharing. I'm Joe Kelly. You're listening to The Brian Killmeade Show.